Hi guys, welcome back to Two Olds Clyde podcast. On today's episode, we have Matt Canavan, a federal senator out of Queensland. On today's episode, we go over the recent events at Bondi, net zero, and our energy sector. I hope you guys enjoy. Interesting times. Obviously, we're recording now, so.
Okay, yep, no, ready when you are, mates. But mate, bloody oath it is. You feared something that's going to happen, eh? So, there you go.
Well, you know, when we've, especially me being a military background, and I have a lot of links to a lot of mates, and we talk about all this stuff all the time, and a lot of them still work overseas, and they still work connected to, you know, certain agencies and stuff like that around the world. And, you know, they've been telling me for a while, there is a heightened risk that something's going to happen. And, you know, I got really, really worked up and really angry yesterday when Anthony Albanese has been coming out and seems like he's trying to police more speech and more social cohesion, right? This social cohesion stuff. And it just seems to me that, and this is what I've been told, is that resources have been dragged away from areas where we need to be looking at extremists, and they've been gone to more policing. And it's just sort of like,
what do you mean by policing though?
Like policing speech, social cohesion, stuff like that.
Well, are they against this right-wing, what they call right-wing extremism?
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen that in his speech in the last 24 hours. He speaks more about right-wing extremism than he does about Islamic extremism.
100%.
In fact, I've seen him use the word Islamic once, I think.
Exactly right, mate. Exactly right. And because he came out, I watched a video this morning, and he turned it back to right-wing extremists, and it's like, well, I don't know. I'm sure they label me as a right-wing extremist, but
me too, mate. I'm far right.
Yeah.
According to the Sydney Morning Herald, well, I'm far right. Maybe not the extremist. I haven't seen them say that, but they're clearly not focused on the real issues, and it's a political exercise. It's cynical, unbelievably cynical. In the wake of grief and people mourning, they're pursuing this gun reform stuff, which they would want to do anyway. And as you say, then throwing shade on the real issue here. Which is extremist radical Islam. We can say that. We should talk about it.
Yeah, we need to have open conversations about it as well. And we need to have open conversations for the past couple of years of that. Look, and I agree that in a democracy, everyone needs to be able to go protest peacefully. You know, but when you start to burn the Australian flag, fly the ISIS flag, fly the flags of terrorist organisations overseas, and that to go completely unchecked by the current government, and the Australian people have been calling it out for 2 years now. I just feel like we've come to a point where...
Not only unchecked, we let them to use the Sydney Harbour Bridge. I mean, why can't that be restricted? I mean, the New South Wales government could have passed laws saying no. I agree with you. People are allowed to speak their mind, but that doesn't mean you can just interrupt people's lives and shut down critical infrastructure. And by the government's effectively giving licence to this kind of hate speech on that... those symbols of our nation does give it a degree of legitimacy it doesn't deserve. And then, of course, the more extreme value parts of this should have been cracked down on. I mean, there's been people preaching this hate in mosques for the last few years. Nothing happens.
I've called
there
it
has to be a crackdown on that. And to be very clear, it's not all of Islam. I've got plenty of friends, particularly locally where I live, who of the Muslim faith. I've got a great relationship with the community there. But there is a problem with a small part of Islamic teaching, of the Islamic faith, that is very extremist, it's very radical, and it's ultimately manifests in a very violent way. That needs to be eradicated.
I was watching the younger guy use his bolt-action rifle, and it looked like he had sharpened and honed his skills.
You reckon? Yeah, you'd know more than me.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, there's stories of him going to the Philippines, hey? And
yeah, stuff like that. I haven't dove too much into that. Just what I've been able to see from the footage and how he was able to use a bolt-action rifle, and he probably got about 5 or 6 shots off in under 5 or 6 seconds.
So that's seriously professional.
Seriously professional.
Right.
And at the same time, he's obviously aiming, and then he was firing and moving, and then just what he was doing when they were fighting the police back, just using cover, popping up to only get his...
Moving all the time, wasn't he?
He looked like something had potentially coordinated or
presumably they scoped that bridge too, right?
100%.
It seemed like a strategic location.
That's it. They had the upper ground shooting down. Yeah. It was like fish in a barrel. One of my friends, actually, I told you the story before, but one of my friends was driving, because he lives 2 street off Bondi, and he was driving there, seen it all happen, stopped his car, and ran down whilst everyone was running back up, and he got into the scene, and he got a girl with a broken leg and a little baby out of there, and then he ran back down again and started working on people straight away. But the fire was still happening, he was saying. God. And one of the unfortunate things is like some of the police officers, because I've heard today that some of them were 5 or 6 weeks out of the academy.
Really?
And for them to be confronted like that.
Yeah.
But I've always thought to myself, cop cars and that, they need to have what potentially the American cars do. They have an M4 in there. Because a high-powered rifle like that with a 7.62, it's literally like shooting a pellet gun back at them if you've got a pistol. Like, you need to get into a range within 20
Well, you know
meters.
that. So, I mean, there's been criticism of them, and I haven't joined that, but of the police, but you're saying effectively, if you've just got a pistol,
it's
you
not
pop your head up, you're just shooting.
To be honest, I'm actually surprised.
Suicide, basically.
I'm actually surprised the cops got him. Because people don't understand how outgunned they were.
Yeah.
And coming from a position of dominance, where they were on the hill where they could scope everything out, these people would have been having to move under fire to get close enough to shoot at them. It's like trying to fight someone with a knife. And you've got nothing, and so then that person is bigger than you as well.
Well, it'll be more controversial. What about the fact that no one else has guns in Australia? Like the US are all criticising us for not having guns. I mean, what do you think of that as a former? Should former military be allowed to have, like your mate, should he be allowed to have a gun and be prepared for this kind of stuff?
With the right background checks, definitely. I think I think that I should be able to own guns. I think that I should be able to protect my family.
I mean, there's nothing stopping you, but you have to go through the same process as everybody else. There's no special treatment for a former.
But I could almost guarantee that they would try and hit me up for being ex-military mental health or something like that.
Really? You think there'd be actually barriers to you owning a firearm as a former person?
But I have gone through the process and started the process just because of like threats I get personally. And I was talking to a friend, and he said, one good position you could be in is a gun owner, and just put photos up of you going to the range and shooting.
Right.
Because people might think twice about coming around your house.
Jeez, right.
So, just one thing. But look, I think, I'm not blaming any of the cops, because the cops did neutralise, and they would just get put in that
outcome. They weren't given ultimately here, especially in positions like I'm in, the politicians have got to take the responsibility, right? We're the ones who set the rules, the guidelines, give the cops what weapons they're allowed to have. And I certainly think it's a fair discussion that you've just raised about, what about having more high-powered rifles, long arms in their vehicles? I mean, we have them at Parliament House.
You do?
The long arms. We never did.
Yeah.
I think it was, and I'm doing this from memory, but I think it was in light of the Canadian Parliament invasion. You might remember that some guy got into the Canadian Parliament. It's very low security. I was there just before this happened. And a guy got in, killed some people tragically. And it was actually the Speaker of the Parliament had a gun in his drawer.
Right.
And he went back to his office, grabbed that, and neutralised this guy. I think it was just one lone wolf, as they say, I believe. After that, obviously, parliaments around the world started locking down. That's why we've got the big gates. Certainly all the fences and everything, that all came in after that, around Parliament House today. And I believe it was after that, certainly around that time, that we had AFP with long arms patrolling the perimeter of Parliament House. Before that, there was none of that. In fact, I don't know if there was any one carrying weapons. Presume there would have been weapons somewhere in the Parliament. But the security guards don't do that. So, we've got that protection now in Parliament House. Why shouldn't people have that with their police on the streets, on the beat?
Just make sure they're in Hastie's office.
If they get that far, are in trouble. So, the idea is keep them away from that. So, look, it's terrible to be talking about this stuff, because we haven't had to confront it really as a country in a big way. We've had little outbreaks, but it certainly feels like something changed this week in Australia. Yeah,
I don't think Australia will ever be the same, and this is one of my gripes with it all, is I just haven't seen any accountability from any politicians, and I don't want to have a crack at you, but
no, go for it,
mate. No. But Anthony Albanese and Susan Ley, the first words that come out of their mouth is more laws. Like, where's your accountability? Because it's not just me that is just furious with this situation. Everything's going to boil over now. We're seeing Jacinta Allen got booed last night speaking at a gig in somewhere, and Tony Burke got shouted away from the memorial site. It just feels like tensions now.
Well, it's time for Australians not to be polite, not to be, in my view, like we got to, we obviously need to keep our frustration and our anger. I'm angry. We need to keep that in check and channeled in the right direction. But perhaps there's been just a little bit too much deference and respect provided by Australians to those in authority who have let us down. You're right. And we need to let people in positions of those authority know that the public, I believe, feel like they've been let down and things have got to change. So I totally agree with you that not only has the first words, as you say, come out of some people's mouths being new laws, and I must say I haven't actually seen a lot of what Susan has said, so I'm sorry, it's been hard to keep up with everything. But not only have they said these new laws, that's clearly a cynical attempt to distract from the real issues. Right, like there's no other way about it, and we can all see that, right? We're not stupid. The Prime Minister seems to think we are, but the Prime Minister is clearly trying to distract from the fundamental issue here about why this happened on the weekend. And it wasn't the guns, right? I mean, there are plenty of guns in Western Sydney, right? Legal and illegal. Now, these guys happen to have firearm licenses, but let's say there's a world where they couldn't get that. I'm sure they could have got. Given how radicalised these guys seem to be, given, as you've said, how organised they seem to be, how determined they were, how premeditated it was, I'm sure they could have got firearms. Whether they're banned or not, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what laws they got. People like that are going to find a way. The thing we've got to do is try and find a way that people like that, with ideas like that, aren't in this country. Or if they're here, not here for long, or we grab them off the streets before something like this happens. That's what's got to happen. You've got to deal with the ideas. Not with the tools, don't deal with the symptoms, the causes of this, the radical extremist ideas, hateful ideas that have been allowed to spread. It should be nothing is done to check them in the last few years, particularly post-October 7th, but this goes back a long way before that as well. So we've got to deal with that issue, and that means a rethinking of our migration program, how we assimilate and integrate new migrants. We don't really do any of that anymore. That should change, go back to what we used to do. And a more forthright defence of what it means to live in this country and what we expect of people who want to live here.
I would love to see a immigration pause completely now. I know a lot of politicians probably know on the back of that the economic devastation that might cause, but for me, if we're running a country that is solely relying on something like immigration to help prop it up, then we've failed as a government to be able to have resources and to be able to sufficiently use what Australia has at its.
Look, I hope we don't have to get to an immigration pause, because you say that will cause some disruption. However, I mean, what I would say is we did have an experiment with closing the border. We can all remember it. The sky didn't fall in.
That's right.
Right. It built up some problems, and it probably wasn't sustainable, but we closed our border for a good couple of years. In WA's case, nearly 3 years, right, for the rest of the country. And things sort of ticked along okay, all right? So the idea we can't control our border more is absolute bunkum. We can see we can. The government has the power to do it. If it was good enough during COVID, why isn't it good enough now to do that? And so I certainly think we should not be shy about putting in enhanced measures, at least at our border, which do a much greater job at vetting who comes into this country. And some countries, if they're coming from certain parts of the world, there should be a heightened degree of scrutiny, because some parts of this world are homes for this hateful ideology. And
you're not racist for saying that either.
Well, I don't care what people label me. But it's just the truth. It's the absolute truth that there are some countries where these type of hateful ideologies have been allowed to spread. And I'm not even being pejorative about that. Some of these countries are in a very poor state. I feel lots of sorry for them. It's terrible what's going on. It's not the people's fault necessarily. But I, as an Australian politician, as a representative of you guys, have to do what I can to protect the Australian people. It's up to other countries to fix their countries, but we have to look after our own country first. And one way of doing that is making sure, as much as possible, and it's never going to be 100% guaranteed, but as much as possible, we don't take in people here that are going to be an undue risk to our social harmony. Because a lot of people have talked about social cohesion and all that, and look, it's terrible what's happened in this country, but we're not going to regain that social cohesion until we make sure that the people coming to this country, the people coming to live, want to be here, want to be part of it, and we'll make sure they make adjustments to live in our society, not the other way around.
And I also feel like we're heading towards a point of where your average Australian is going to push back, and they're going to push back to a point where it's going to get really, really ugly.
That's right.
I actually feel that within, and I can see that, right? I see that on all my social media platforms. I see that with talking to friends. I've had friends that have never been involved in politics, have been despised in it, don't care about who runs the country, anything like that. And even they've been talking to me lately saying, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? Why does it look like we are being practically replaced in our own country? Why is there record amounts of mass immigration? Why do we have to sometimes feel like it's scary to walk around in certain suburbs in Melbourne or the inner city of Melbourne with a knife attack, and now this recent last attack? It just seems like potentially the more we bring people in, the more we bring in sometimes their issues, and Australians are getting affected. Like, because everyone's saying this is an attack on a Jewish Australian, and I get that, but it's also an attack on Australians.
Oh, totally, it is, and it is. Well, we should, and we have to recognise it's an attack on Jewish Australians. It was on a Jewish holiday. It was on a Jewish religious festival. Again, that's something never thought we would see in this country, that people's religion would be so directly attacked. And they were so clearly targeted. It would seem, we're still learning all the details, of course, but it seems from the video that these shooters were clearly seeking to target just those people at that celebration. They were seemingly warding off other people who didn't seem to be part of that. So, that is striking at the heart of what it means to live in a free country like ours. People can freely practice their religion, and now, a lot of people, particularly those of Jewish faith, won't feel as free to do that. So it's totally changed our country. But it's also an attack on our nation, almost given where the location it is. There's something about that too.
100%.
That our country is, it's not just an idea. Partly it's our ideas and values, but it's also a physical place. And Bondi Beach is almost a spiritual place for us as Australians. I just saw online today an advertisement for Bondi Beach. It looked like it was from the 1950s, those retro sort of style, and it said, the actually, I'll bring it up. I think it was the Carefree something I retweeted it. The Playground of the Pacific. That was it. The Playground of the Pacific here, like that, right? This is part of our culture, right? But what's been ripped away from us in the last 24 hours or so, 48 hours now, is the next time I go back to Bondi Beach, I won't just be thinking of fun and sand and sun. You'll think about this. You will, and we should think about that. But that something's changed, right? Something will change in how we think about things when we go to that physical place of this country and these people have taken away from us. And so there's got to be justice for what these people, these evil people, have done. And there's got to be action to make sure that as much as possible it doesn't happen again. We've got to reestablish order in our country. Because I don't care, people will try and call us race and all that. I saw a great interview with a prince, I can't remember who it was, but somebody in the UAE. And he was saying how he doesn't understand in the West why you put up with this crap. Like in his country, they wouldn't put up.
Empathy,
they wouldn't put up in the UAE, in a Muslim country. They wouldn't put up with people espousing this extremist, violent rhetoric. They'd be off the streets, right? Wouldn't allow it to be allowed.
They are in
so
the US.
I don't care if people call me racist, but it's not. It's about, do you believe in a degree of order in a society where if you want to be part of our society, if you want to live here, if you want to have the privileges of the freedoms and liberties we have, you have to act in a certain way, and you can't be going around espousing hate and violence to other people in our society. That the days of that should end, and it doesn't matter what society, or Western, Asian, Middle Eastern, good orderly societies don't allow that to happen.
Yeah, and I don't know, over the last 20 years, especially since the war on terror and me being involved in it, and then coming back here and watching us import people from parts of that globe continuously with very, very vetting, the vetting's been very, very low. Because they've done it en masse. And I just feel like we're going to get up to such a point where maybe this is the event that pushes Australians past the point, but we had a day of sorrow, and now it just feels like there's this huge anger brewing up. And I think the government can either capture that anger and admit where they've gone wrong and admit that, yeah, look, maybe we need to stop immigration to a point. Maybe our vetting needs to get better. Maybe we need to go back to really hardcore policing and getting the AFP onto these extremist groups, you know, getting them out, finding where they are, prosecuting them, potentially deporting them, and stop trying to attack free speech laws so much. That's what I feel like is happening, right? This social cohesion, which they came out and spoke about a couple of weeks ago or maybe a month ago. But to me, it just feels like we're like diverting our way away from potentially the guys that control the lead bullets flying around, and they're more worried about policing speech.
Totally. And look, there's a little bit of... There's a lot of what you just said and a lot of things that are right. I suppose I would say, I'll start with at the start, you said controlling immigration, vetting better, policing. I think we should do all of the above. And I'm not saying that we need to freeze migration per se, but we should be slowing it down. There's no way we can physically do that proper vetting with the number of people we're taking in right now. It's got to be basically an open floodgate. We're going to have the net overseas migration numbers come out this week. It would seem like they've probably gone up. The early data, the leading indicators seem to indicate that they had come down from the very high levels of 500,000 a year, like off the charts of what we'd ever done before, and they've come down a bit, and it looks like they're going to blip back up this week.
Of course they are.
At the very least, they're at very, very high levels. They're still at least probably 50% above the long-term, or above the average for this century, not the long-term average. It's way too high.
That's got to come down. It's got to come down.
And I think the arguments and the reasons for that were there before this horrific attack. From an economic viewpoint alone, we can all say, I'm just devastated to see people living in tents in our city. It shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening in Australia that often working people can't find a home. And so for that reason alone, it should be come back. But this adds extra weight here. That if we clearly can't get our vetting right, let's just slow down the intake, slow it right down. And if it needs to take longer and people have delays, and we've got to do what like Trump's proposing to do, go through people's social media history. Why not? Why shouldn't we do that before you come here? If you've been supporting Hamas or retweeting stuff, well, sorry, bad luck. You're not getting into our country. Stuff like that needs to be looked at seriously. And then the other thing you mentioned about free speech at the end, I realise there's a little bit of tension in what I'm proposing, and I cop criticism for that sometimes. But I do want to make clear that I have no truck with anyone that incites violence. Like, I do think there should be serious rules and laws against that on all sides of the debate.
I agree.
And I that's why I supported the laws about a year ago. We won on misinformation, lost on under 16, and then we had these so-called hate speech and hate symbols laws. Why I supported them was really all those laws did from a speech perspective, apart from the symbols and stuff, which is another issue, but the actual speech was to increase or decrease the threshold to prosecute someone for incitement to violence. And I had some issues with that because I want to make clear that I don't believe saying something that causes someone to psychologically be harmed is a violent act. There is some people who argue that now, and I think that's crap. But if you're inciting someone to cause physical harm to somebody, that is a crime. Always has been a crime.
That's always been in place.
It has been. Yeah. The police, though, have said it's very hard to reach the threshold. You've got to almost prove intent under the way the law was before. Which makes it very difficult. So what we've effectively done last year is change the laws to say that, look, if the effect is clear, reasonably clear, that the effect of your speech would be to cause violence, you can be prosecuted. Now, I don't believe anyone's been prosecuted under these new laws. It goes back to this stuff about the hate preachers we see and that the death to the Jews chants. Why aren't people being prosecuted under the laws we've had for that? So I'm all for that. Like, that's not free speech, in my view. As I say, we've got to have an orderly society as well as a free society. But if you're criticising in a respectful way the spread of a radical ideology in Islam, if you're free to criticise the radical ideologies of the right too, of course. People can say that. One of the reasons perhaps we've ended up in this situation is we haven't been willing to have a free and open discussion about these issues because you get immediately cancelled. You don't get prosecuted and jailed, but you get socially cancelled. You get labelled a racist, a bigot, a far-right extremist if you raise uncomfortable questions about the extremist ideologies that some people seem to have in this country.
Yeah, I've done a few reels a couple of months ago on Western Sydney guys speaking for Islam, saying that Islam needs to enter every house. And, I sort of watched it and then put my thoughts on it, saying, like, we live in a country where you are free to practice your law of religion, but we are free from religious law, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
so, we're free from that. So that's our open culture and country that we live in. And we can't have one race saying that my Islamic beliefs need to enter every single house because that's what I need to do. So I spoke up against that and I got smashed.
Right.
Just
Who was saying that?
there was a cleric over in Western Sydney, so he was like a head of a mosque or something like that. And there's been a couple of them which have done it, and every single
But
time.
the idea was he wanted the government to...
No, the idea was that he needs to be able to spread Islam through every house in Australia. And it's like, well, I'm not religious, but I don't want that in my house, and people shouldn't be going out and saying that. Anyway, I did a reel on that, and I've done a few reels on those people sort of saying that sort of stuff. And the backlash I've got is massive.
Well, I suppose, look, I mean, you're free to proselytise in this country. You're free to say you should support this religion or that. Who knows, we might have a Mormon knock on your door while you're here. They're all very polite, I've found in my experience.
Won't be able to knock on they won't get past the gate.
Yeah, that's
won't get past the gate.
But so, okay, look, at one level, I'm okay with that. And as I say, look, I've tried over my years, and we've, a formative experience for me was 9/11, all that. I've tried to understand more about the Muslim faith, about Islamic people. And I, to some level, have respect for lots of parts of Islamic history and heritage. And if you look at their history and heritage, this extreme ideology is a relatively recent phenomenon that grew up through this Wahhabist sort of sect in the late 1800s. And it's terrible. It's a terrible disease that's unfortunately infected the minds of many young people in particular through the Islamic world, and a lot of it in the Western world, I should say, the Islamic people in the Western world. It's sort of combined with a sort of post-colonial anti-imperialism, Marxist sort of agenda as well. It's a very potent mix. I think it's a dangerous mix, and ultimately can manifest in violent ways. So that's just to be clear again, like, that's what I'm opposed to, because it is strange. It is strange for me, coming from, I live in Rockhampton or near Rockhampton, and to some degree we're a little insulated from some of these tensions. We have an Islamic community, but being a small country town, everyone's got to get along. Like, you can't, live in a enclave or something that doesn't happen. We're all together, and there's a mosque in the middle of town, and they have an open day, and I go to that every year, and they're really nice people, and they've got lovely families, and they work very hard. A lot of them work in the meatworks in Rockhampton. They're good people, and it's funny how I sometimes think that, well, if you're in this country and you love your family and you practice your faith and you're disciplined. I mean, I'm amazed what they do in Ramadan. I don't think I could do that. But okay, they've got a lifestyle like they adhere to. And then I compare that to some of the woke agenda that's pushed on my kids in schools. And sometimes I'm like, well, which one is worse, right?
Yeah.
They say these guys are family people. They have a little bit different practices than we do, but they're not revolutionary different. And then sometimes I see stuff that's pushed to our children about changing your sexuality, thinking about your sexuality at very young ages, and that to me is very alien and much more dangerous. So it is. And you said before, a lot more people getting involved in politics. It's a very bizarre world right now we're in.
I don't think
we don't just face one threat. I think that's the problem. There's a threat within our society as well, in my view, that's sometimes almost more insidious than what we saw on the weekend. Yeah,
and I think we've allowed this as maybe not we the people, but there's just been something happened. I think since about 2014. I always say 2014, the day that I left the army, was when women could go into service, right? And the army started to get a bit woke then.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, time to get out of here. But since then, it's just been like anyone that sort of has spoken back or pushed back, you get labelled a racist, a bigot.
Well, look what happened to Hasty during the... I hated that.
Well,
I don't know if you remember. He said years ago. He said years ago something like, and I don't want to get it wrong for him, I don't want to get him in more trouble. But he said something like, "We've got to be careful about women in combat roles."
Oh, we have to be. I mean,
right. And then he got a ton of bricks on him. For some reason, this was resuscitated during the campaign. I don't believe he said it during the campaign, but that's right. Now it's coming back to me. One of our candidates got punted for saying something like this. I think he was down the Illawarra or somewhere like that. And
I know the guy.
Yeah, right. And so he got disendorsed. Yeah, same as sort of same background as Hasty. He gets disendorsed for something like this. And then the media dredge up Hasty's comments like, well, if you're disendorsing this guy, why are you, why is your defence minister or shadow defence minister saying the same thing, or similar things?
It's very,
and no one came to his defence. Like, I mean, well, I did, but I was a mere backbencher, still am a mere backbencher. But none of the leadership really came to Andrew Hasty's defence. And my view was, look, I haven't served our country. I haven't put my life on the line. I'm happy to listen to the bloke who has and hear his perspective.
Yeah.
And Andrew even said, look, he's not planning to change it. Sort of had a view he had, but he wouldn't change the policy because that's what our policy was, to keep the status quo. But I think his perspective is legitimate. You should probably listen to it.
If you understand how many women are going through in the name of DEI, we need to get women into these combat roles. The amount of women that are going through training, and I know this because I know the people that are training them, 90 to 95% of these females going through are ending up broken.
Really?
Like their bodies just aren't designed, sorry everyone, but your bodies aren't designed to carry 30 to 40 kilos.
So it's a physical thing?
Physical thing, and they are just breaking down. Their hips aren't designed to carry heavy shit like we were. They weren't designed to move and fire. They weren't designed to pick up a one of your soldiers when you're carrying 15 kilos worth of stuff and then be able to run 100 meters. It's just, unfortunately... and this is going to get me labelled as sexist, whatever, who cares? Women are designed...
What about me? Go for it, sorry.
Mate, women are designed to have babies. That's why they have these, like their hips are designed differently. And when you put that load on them, when you put them through that training, they're all coming out mentally affected because they didn't pass, and physically they are broken, and now they're all having to be put on pensions for the rest of their life because we're breaking them during training. And then the second thing is, trust me, I've seen males in body bags with the Australian flag draped over their soldiers coming home. It's okay for males. It's not okay for females. If we were in a time of actual war, like we were actually sending females over to the front line and fighting, I don't think we would be having them in the military. I don't think so.
Because you just don't think the psychological, like the impact here at home among people to see.
Imagine the backlash of a female in the front line coming home and dying. That would just be...
it does happen. It happens in the US military, doesn't it? Quite a bit, doesn't it?
It does, but...
because they've had a lot more casualties.
Yeah, potentially sometimes through like indirect fire if they're in a base. And look, I've worked with females outside the wire because when we were over in Afghanistan, there was certain times where we couldn't touch women. So we need to bring a female out with us to be able to pat women down.
Right.
Now, sometimes these women, they weren't women, they were men with an AK on their little blimp. But we found out, right? But we wouldn't have been able to touch them if we didn't have a female with us.
Right.
But that's in a if you're on a firefight or something, they are nowhere near that. They are.
Well, we just need common sense, right? And
100%.
And the problem is across a lot of areas is we don't listen to the people who know the most about how things work. Because we've entered an era of wishful thinking, right? We want to think that everybody's equal. We want to think that we can redesign the laws of thermodynamics and run a power system on weather-dependent energy. We wish that were the case, and so the idea is, well, because technology is amazing, because the modern world's amazing, we can just wish it, and the engineers can go solve the problem. Like, you guys go do it. We're going to have 100% renewable power. You do it. All right, we're going to have women in combat roles. You guys work it out. And very few, and I've seen it time and time again in my time in politics, the actual people making the decisions, usually the politicians, but also the senior bureaucrats, never really get their hands dirty and talk to those people who are actually in the power stations having to manage it day to day, or in your case, on the front lines, and listening to them. So the biggest thing perhaps we could do as a political class right now is maybe shut up for a little bit. I'm talking to you, but maybe shut up and just listen to people. Listen to people what they want about our migration program. Listen to people who know how an energy system works. Listen to people who know what we need to do to be a lethal fighting force and defend our nation. Just listen.
Do you think that's why we are where we are today? Because we've just had this wishful thinking of, we will be okay with everything and it'll work out, and maybe the people we're bringing in, they'll be nice, or the energy system won't be corrupted by green billionaires behind it and all that sort of stuff. Do you reckon
I think primarily it's the sins of complacency, right? Because we've had a pretty lucky run of it. In my view, until recently, my generation were pretty lucky. I never experienced a recession in the workforce until COVID, and even COVID itself, at least in COVID, for most people, for some it was terrible, but for a lot of people it was actually okay because the government gave out so much money.
We borrowed a lot of money.
Exactly. A lot of small businesses were hit and never come back, all that. But for the vast bulk of salary wage earners who got JobKeeper, things were fine.
Well, we're feeling the sort of heat
and now we're starting to feel the pain. Like, so until recently, now it's starting to feel wages have dropped, inflation's up. Those who don't afford a home or got ahead on their mortgage are really feeling it. So that is starting to change. But until that time, because things were good, as I say, because technology is amazing, a lot of people, some people would explicitly say, well, we've got these phones and, they've come from nowhere. We now can talk to you on this wonderful technology that's all very cheap. Surely we can do the same in electricity. Or we can do the same for steel production or fertilizer production. We can just revolutionise it all, just like we've done with communications. The metaphor does not scale. The metaphor does not work. But for a lot of people who don't know how things work, it's an easy rhetorical crutch to rely on. And we're starting to see the limits of physics, of the real world. And that's why we've got massive price spikes now. We've got inflation breaking out. We're losing our industrial base, especially to China. Now, there's a whole lot of other reasons about why this is being allowed to happen and continue to persist. But I think at the heart of it, of why we've allowed it to happen, is because we've got a bit lazy, we've got a bit complacent, and we're probably about to go through the school of hard knocks because of that.
I think as well that, the whole of Australia has looked at, I don't know if it's Norway or whatever, or Qatar and their royalties program and stuff like that. And Australia started to kick up a really big stink, especially across Australians. Everyone's like, why don't we tax this? Why don't we tax that? And I believe Queensland put on a 40% tax for their coal industry, and now 5 to 10% of our coal industry is going to Indonesia because China is buying from there. That's what I read recently. But whilst everyone screams about taxing the natural resource sector and stuff like that, the green energy sector is now coming out to be, 70 to 75% of our wind turbines are now being foreign owned, and a lot of the profits from them are being foreign owned. So I feel like with our natural resource sector, everyone talks about taxing it, and now the exact same system is being set up potentially.
There's I look, a lot of what you said is sense. I just sent you, I was showing you a graph there of Indonesia's coal production this century compared to ours. It's the red line there that you can see. Maybe you can put that up later for your followers. Go and follow. It's Two Worlds Collide, isn't it? That's your Twitter.
But what I'll do is if you screenshot this, I'll have it next to while we're talking.
Yeah. So what you'll see then, if you can do that trick, is this century, Indonesian coal production has almost quadrupled in the last 10 years, just 12 years, it's doubled. They're on a tear. Ours went up a little bit in the China boom of the 2000s, but really in the last 10 years or so, our coal production has stagnated. So no doubt, we haven't actually really lost coal production per se. It's about the same as it's always been.
But on a trajectory
but we're losing
line.
investment. And in Queensland particularly, there's not a lot of new investment going in, certainly not greenfields, like expansion of stuff is not going in. People will buy existing mines because the coal is very good quality and that's approved. And when you buy it, you'll capitalise in that tax rate. So that'll all be reflected in the price. But new stuff's just not getting built. But as you can see, Indonesia's going like no tomorrow. And we've got to be really careful here. To me, it's something that has just gone completely unnoticed, maybe because it happens in the West, maybe because the gold industry has been strong and it's sort of been hidden a bit. But we lost the entire nickel industry last year. Like, we did used to smelt and refine nickel. It was one of the critical minerals that was meant to be the future for our industry. If coal and gas went away, we were going to do nickel and copper and lithium and stuff like this. Nickel is one of the key ingredients in most electric vehicle batteries. Not all, but a lot of them. So it's huge extra demand for it.
Where did that go to Africa?
Indonesia
as well.
So there's a great Channel 7 documentary some people may have watched, which shows this in stark detail. That what happened was Indonesia, financed by China, built massive amounts of coal-fired power stations. They've got nickel ores that are lower quality than ours, so they're more costly to refine. But with that cheap coal-fired power, they're able to undercut us. BHP, who own the nickel industry, most of the nickel industry in Western Australia, they decided that instead they'd try and power their refineries and smelters on green energy. And when the customer in Berlin went to pick up their Tesla, they'd want to know that the nickel in the battery came from a renewable energy source, not from dirty coal. That was BHP's bet. They said that they gave speeches saying, yep, there'll be a green premium for nickel in electric vehicles.
Can't smelt it without coal.
well, you can nickel. You can do nickel. You can use electricity. Okay. So you can technically do it. It's just more expensive.
A lot more expensive.
And, BHP, a massive multinational company, one of the biggest in Australia, ended up being so naive to think that German customers would demand, I want my green nickel. Guess what? No. No
one cares.
They don't care.
Yeah,
they don't care. Even in climate-conscious Europe, they're happily buying the batteries made with Indonesian dirty nickel powered by coal-fired power. And we lost the whole industry. Gone. Probably never going to get it back, right? Once these things go, very hard to get back. And now the Indonesian government is... Now keep in mind, they're a very close neighbour to us. You might want to get this graph up too. That shows industrial electricity prices across the world. In Indonesia now, Indonesian factories pay less than a third of what Australian factories pay. So we're about 24 US cents a kilowatt hour here in Australia, and Indonesia's 7 cents a kilowatt hour. We used to be just over 10, so we were very competitive with the cheapest in the world. But we've more than doubled those power prices in the last couple of decades. And now the new Indonesian president has said that he wants to go after copper, he wants to go after bauxite. That's aluminium. Bauxite's aluminium. They're both industries we're big in as well. And so we have this China-financed competitor to our north that's just building coal-fired power stations like it's going out of fashion. They signed up to net zero too. Indonesia said they were doing net zero. It's just maybe you need to watch what people do, not what they say sometimes. And now they're taking all our jobs, taking our industry, and we're sitting back thinking that, it'll be okay, renewables are going to be cheaper in 5 years, in 10 years' time. It's okay, we'll get free beer tomorrow. The pub's going to give us free beer tomorrow. It'll all be okay. It's again, another example of just wishful thinking that's going to cost a lot of jobs in this country unless we turn it around soon.
My biggest gripe with all of this as well is everyone says that, we need to save the planet in Australia, we need to do this, we need to do that. But at the end of the day, when we have our neighbours that are taking the coal and gas that we would be burning, but they're just burning it 3,000 kilometres north of here.
Same.
Everyone understands, right? We share the same atmosphere with them. Like, what they say is climate change doesn't have borders. Well, why do we have to cut back when they're just over-extensively burning what we're not burning, and where actually our CO2 is going up? But
another thing you'll see in that graph, Japan now has cheaper electricity prices than we do for its factories. We're the biggest energy supplier to Japan, the biggest supplier of coal and gas, and you're right, it's got to go, I don't know, that would be a good 4,000 or 5,000 kilometres at least, wouldn't it? Maybe longer. So they've got to go a long way, the other side of the world, the side of the hemisphere, and they have to, in the gas case, they've got to refrigerate it, they've got to degasify it. All those costs, they still deliver power prices lower than we do to our own industrial companies because we're not using the coal and gas. I mean, here in South Australia, you've only got a few turbines left that don't, gas turbines left that don't run very often. You've got plenty of gas. You've got heaps of gas here in South Australia.
We've also got heaps of uranium.
You actually had really cheap coal too. You shut that down, you had a blackout event, and you've never recovered. South Australia's lost a third of its manufacturing jobs in the last 15 years. A third of them
I'm
gone.
not surprised at all.
And across the country, we're down to almost record lows. In we've lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs since net zero. I just think we've got to wake up to ourselves, because if we can't make things anymore, we can't defend the country either. Like, it is a national security issue, this energy security issue, and we've got a very volatile region. This issue we saw on the weekend is terrible to our country, but what could be worse is if a major conflict emerges in our region. It's clearly a possibility with the aggressive and bullying nature of China. See what they're doing to Japan recently. If anything like that happens, we're in serious, serious trouble, because we do not have an industry that can really respond like we did in World War II. In World War II, in a few years, we were making aeroplanes. Do you think we could do that right now? I'm not sure.
And also, as well, we have some of the best uranium in the world.
Yes.
Yet everyone always says, "Oh, you shouldn't be saying that," but whatever.
Do they?
What's that?
Everyone says you shouldn't be using it.
No. Everyone says that I shouldn't be saying stuff like I'm about to say. But Australia needs to have nuclear weapons.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I've got you.
Yeah.
I thought you meant nuclear energy.
No. Australia should have nuclear weapons. Because what we should be doing is we should be using our own uranium, and we should be lining them nuclear weapons.
All right, I'm not quite there yet.
Townsville.
Okay, you give me your best shot, but the problem with that is we would become a bit of a pariah internationally to do that, if we were to do that.
But why does
would it
everyone
actually
else
increase our security relative to just not having them and having a strong relationship with the United States? But you give me your best argument.
Well, everyone else has practically like a code red. So if Russia gets invaded, they push the button in nuclear world. China's the same. Israel has the same. Pakistan, to an extent, has the same. US has the same. Why can't a resource-rich nation, which sits in a very strategic location between two massive, influential powerhouse nuclear arsenal, why does everyone else get to have it, but then Australia is sitting down here with a very,
if we get it, maybe you probably, if we were to do it, probably Indonesia would go for it too.
We wouldn't
and then we sort of have an arms race in the Southeast Asian region where, look, I don't think anyone has nuclear weapons in that region. I haven't thought about this issue extensively. India would be perhaps the closest country that has them to us.
But if you're talking about...
So I'm a little wary. I don't think it's something you shouldn't be allowed to talk about, though. I think you should be able to raise the discussion. You might be interested. Kim Beazley raised this. Kim Beazley was in a podcast with John Anderson. He said if the US relationship continues to get strained, we should have a serious discussion about acquiring nuclear weapons.
We have the stuff here to do it.
So I don't think it's something we shouldn't discuss. But my own conclusion at the moment is there's more risk than reward for doing that for our country just now.
But what's the risk of someone coming down and invading us and us not being able to defend ourselves?
Well, yes. What is that risk? Well, I don't think it's an imminent risk. I don't think it's more likely than not. But it is a risk. It is a risk, and it's something we should prepare for, given the catastrophic consequences if that risk was to be come true eventually. But clearly, one of the ways we do mitigate that risk is a strong alliance and relationship with the United States. And so if we were to try and acquire nuclear weapons, I think that relationship would, if not end, be extremely, extremely strained. So that's where I'd say, look, it's probably not worth us. And that's where Kim, and I think Kim's a very considered thinker about these things. He was by all reports, a very good defence minister well before my time. But that's where he came to this issue, is if and only if our relationship with the US goes onto the rocks, then we have to consider it. But one thing we should do is have a nuclear energy industry, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's, particularly now we're getting nuclear submarines. We'll be the only country in the world to have nuclear-powered submarines, but not a domestic nuclear energy industry. It's
you don't want to pull your eggs in one basket, right, in the green renewable. You want to have options.
You want to have options.
Even if we did have, let's say we had 20% renewable, 30%, nuclear, and then so we had options. So if once something went down, we have options.
Totally.
And now it just seems we're putting all our eggs in one basket.
Oh, absolutely we are, and we're seeing the consequences of that. Now, my perspective on nuclear is it will take time to build a nuclear power station. We're starting from almost scratch, although we have a excellent, world-class nuclear medicine industry. We have a reactor at Lucas Heights. Quite ironically, for everyone who runs around with the pictures of three-eyed fish and that, we've got a nuclear reactor 30 kilometres from the middle of Sydney. and it's operated perfectly safely. 2 reactors we've had over 60 years, got rebuilt 30 odd years ago, and it's operated very well. It's one of the best in the world. But we have got a big job to do to build an actual power station of a large scale. When we went to the election earlier this year, we said, I think realistically, it could take us 10 years. My view is we don't have 10 years to save our manufacturing industry. We've got to start acting now, so that means coal and gas more immediately.
We've got about 3 to 5 years.
And, we're losing stuff now, so it's, yesterday would have been the time to do it. But the one idea I put on the table, apart from just dumping net zero, is why don't we just run our coal-fired power stations at their capacity or close to their capacity? At the moment, we only run them about 2/3 of the time. If we were just to lift that to 80%, they're normally designed for a 90% utilisation rate, but if we just lifted them to 80%, that would be the equivalent of bringing on 3 new coal-fired power stations overnight. You wouldn't have to build anything. You don't have to wait for approvals. You don't have to negotiate with trade unions to get them built. You just run them. Just chuck the coal into the furnace and run them. Or that would immediately provide cheap power, reliable power, and hopefully keep some of our industry around.
And then for everyone having this CO2 debate out there, I've had this debate before, but what I've realised over time is that I don't think CO2 really changes the weather at all. There's been a whole bunch of times previous this where there has been massive climate change events for hundreds of thousands of years. You talk to someone like Dr. Ian Plimler, and he says that CO2 never drove those events in the past. So why are we thinking now that it's driving these events? Look,
my perspective is there's some evidence out there that an increase in CO2 since the Industrial Revolution has increased temperatures. There's certainly a forcing effect from it. Ian could be right about all the different feedback effects that occur. In the end, it might not mean all that much, but it would appear there's some increase. That has probably led an increase in sea levels as well. They're the 2 things I think you can point to with a fair degree of confidence that something's happened since the Industrial Revolution. Now, my perspective also is that they're nothing to panic about per se. The temperature increases we're seeing are well below the most extreme predictions that were made. So the world is not going to end. We're not all going to instantaneously combust in 10, 20 or 30 years. We can manage and mitigate all of these issues. I do think I want to pick up something you said. I think you're right that in terms of the broader weather issue, there's very little, if not almost no evidence that the increase in CO2 emissions has changed what we would typically decide as the weather or describe as the weather. There hasn't been increased cyclones. There's been fewer cyclones hit Australia. You don't hear that much, but identifiably much, much fewer cyclones hitting North Queensland.
And what's the description of that being changed? Like, I always feel like they say, there's been more weather events. Okay, well, how do we categorise weather events?
Well, I can tell you cyclones are they're categorised, and, at least since the 1960s, because that was when we had satellite data. Before that, we don't have very good data because cyclones would happen in the middle of nowhere out in the ocean, and we couldn't record them. But since satellites, we have really good data. And in the last century, so from 1970 through to 2000, we were getting roughly 12 cyclones hit the Australian coast a year, or form around the Australian coast a year. Now it's 9 this century. It was 9 of those were severe of the 12 in that latter half of the 20th century. Now there's only 6 per year. So it's an identifiable reduction, materially statistically significant reduction. And yet we constantly hear every time, like there was a tropical storm or Cyclone Alfred form up Brisbane. It actually was a tropical storm once it made landfall. There's fear and panic. Insurance companies use this as a justification to jump their premiums. They made a record profit of $4.3 billion last year, the insurance industry.
Of course they did.
Yeah, right. And so this is a scam. The whole net zero stuff is a total scam, right? It's massively increasing the profits of our banks, of our insurance companies,
destroying farmers,
energy companies,
destroying
the farming industry. We've taken up so much farmland through this carbon credit bullshit. It's a total scam. It makes a lot of people money. There's a lot of people making money off it, but it's just that every day Australians have to pay.
It's
not wealth. It's not creating wealth. It's not creating prosperity, which we all share in. It's just creating an industry that we all have to pay for.
I tell people it's like a Wall Street, but for carbon credits. You buy and swap these carbon credits. There's middlemen. There's people taking their slice off the pie because they're the one trading it. There's farmers selling out their land, and then there's big businesses buying that land to say that we can emit here, but because we've got this land here, it's all okay now. So
keep in mind, I worked this out the other day. If you take a business class flight, sorry for your South Australian listeners, I worked it out from Brisbane. I'm from Queensland, so I worked it out from Brisbane to London. If you fly business class from Brisbane to London, that's 8 tonnes of carbon emissions. So the average, if you buy up a hectare of farmland that you mentioned, kick off anything that's productive. So that's what they do. They kick off all the cows, all the workers. You're not allowed to come on if you're actually producing anything. You're not allowed on the land anymore. Pests and weeds are allowed on. They go like crazy, but everything else is kicked off. That a hectare of that land, typically in Australia, will reduce carbon emissions by 5 to 21 tonnes of carbon, of greenhouse gases. That's the figures from the official agricultural advisory body, ABARES they're called, 5 to 21 tonnes. So if you and your wife, you and your spouse fly business class from Brisbane to London, that's 16 tonnes. You're smack bang in the middle of that. When you tick that little box, I've never done it myself, but apparently when you tick that box and say you're green and you want to be carbon neutral.
Oh, you pay extra money.
Yeah, you pay a bit of extra money. But what you're actually doing by doing that, if you're you and your wife flying business class to London, you are taking a hectare of agricultural land, productive farmland from this country, and converting it to pests and weeds. And apparently that lowers the temperature of the globe by doing that. But that's what you're doing. That's what it should say. We should pass a law that says, how much land. Because when you say you're saving such and such million tons of emissions or tons of emissions, you actually should say, well, this much land is being taken out of production. This many jobs are being lost. There's no truck drivers. There's no musterers anymore. No fencing contractors. All those jobs lost. As you say, the farmers get paid for it. So good luck to them. But all those workers, the working class, get stiffed. Those rural communities that rely on those farms, there's no one coming to the cafes. There's no one coming to the hotels. No one going to service stations to fill up anymore. Not as many people. They're all gone. I heard the other day, I was out in Western New South Wales, $80 million of land, $80 million of production, from land, has been taken out of the Berkshire in the last couple of years. That's massive for them, right?
That's terrible.
That's massive. And apparently this is saving the planet.
But no one else is doing it around the world. It's just Australia.
No, pretty much no one. I mean, there are a few stupid countries like us. The UK has done more than us in terms of reducing their emissions, and now they're industrial wastelands. Some countries in Europe have done.
Developing nations like China and India.
Oh, that's right. If you take the EU as a whole and then the UK, we are the second largest in the world in terms of emissions reductions. So it goes UK, us, EU. Japan's not far behind, but what Japan do is just buy offsets from other countries. They themselves haven't reduced their emissions, but they go to India and other countries and buy these probably even dodgier carbon credits.
Of course they do. And
that gets to reduce emissions. But get this one. This is the one I love the most. So you probably remember someone called Jacinda Ardern over there in New Zealand. She used to crap on about climate change all the time. I think she still is. Got a gig with the UN or something.
And, of course she did.
And guess what? In the last 20 years, New Zealand's emissions have gone up.
Yeah, right.
Not down. So we've reduced our emissions by 28%. We go to these Pacific conferences and get accused by all these Pacific Island countries. Guess what? Most of those Pacific Island countries have increased their emissions in the past 20 years. We get lectured to, and then Jacinda Ardern turns up and gets applauded. New Zealand's increased its emissions. It's a total scam, right? It's a scam inside our country. It's a scam internationally. Why are we doing this? So that's what we're saying. I've successfully got our Liberal and National Party coalition to dump this net zero idea, which no one else is doing, or except for a few countries like the UK, which are bankrupting themselves. But let's not do that. What we're saying we do, we'd only do what other developed countries are doing. If they're going to do something, we'll do it too. But right now, they're not doing much at all. So we shouldn't do that much at all.
Especially when we're 1% of the world's emissions.
Exactly. Why would we go harder?
I had a chat with a mate the other day because everyone's like, oh, no, but it's like per capita how many... But no one says, what's the per square mile? Have you ever heard that argument?
No, I haven't. I suppose Antarctica would be getting a good deal then. The penguins would go haywire.
If we go what's per square mile, we're actually already...
of course. That's all rubbish. I mean, look, those people saying that, though, don't agree with the Paris Agreement then, right? Because the Paris Agreement doesn't say per capita. The Paris Agreement, what we signed up to, requires countries to report against their total emissions, requires countries to set a goal, doesn't require net zero, just by what you might hear. But it requires you to set a target based on those total emissions. And keep in mind, one reason our per capita emissions are so high is we are a huge energy supplier to Japan, to Korea, to China, to India increasingly. Those countries, the emissions that are formed when you do the coal mining here, when you do the liquefaction for the gas here, those emissions stay in Australia, even though we're supplying those goods to those other countries for their energy needs. So there is an argument to say, well, why aren't we measuring carbon based on your consumption, not on your production? Right now we're doing the production. This also means that a country like the UK can show that they've reduced their emissions by 44% because they've shut down all their coal-fired power stations, shut down their steel industry, etc. But their consumers are still buying these products from China made by coal. And they're not having to account for that carbon consumption. So the whole thing is a mess.
So
you can argue the data like this till their cows come home, but the basic story is Australia is doing much, much more than the rest of the world. There's no reason for us to do that, and it's costing Australians an arm and a leg way too much.
It seems like it's costing the entire Western world the arms and its leg, except for the US because they've changed it. But then, the Eastern world has seemed to be just when, we'll do it.
Totally. And it does frustrate me a lot, particularly from those politicians, and we see a lot in the Labor Party who say we're part of the Asian region, this is the Asian century, but none of them seem to actually understand what's happening in Asia or get their hands dirty in Asia. Too many Australian politicians spend their study tours or whatever. We don't actually have study tours anymore. We got rid of those, so I shouldn't say that. Everyone thinks we get so many perks.
Well,
we don't have those. But too many ministers. I haven't brought my family on this trip, by the way, just to make it very clear. And I'm not going to the cricket either. But too many ministers spend too much time in Europe, right? They go because it's nice. Europe's really, really nice. But our competitive threats, I just mentioned Indonesia, our issues are going to be, we're going to face them in Asia. If there's conflict, it's going to come out of Asia. And whether you call it the Asian century or not, there is a huge shift in the world's balance coming to this region. It's where the wealth's being created. It's where the middle class is rising up. It's probably where future global tensions are going to originate from. We need to be much more focused on that. And there is this naivety, as you say, among our political class, who say, oh, everybody's acting on climate. No. A few European countries are acting on climate. They're a very small part of the world's production. They're not the influential countries they used to be. And meanwhile, China, India, Korea, all these other countries are just going gangbusters on improving their people's lives. And at times, in the case of China's case, rearming to the hilt. So we should be much more mindful of that.
Just before we quickly wrap up, because I know you've got to get somewhere, and I just want to go back to, people, the only people that I've heard, or politicians heard, speak like you have spoken to about the Bondi event is yourself, Andrew Hastie, and Pauline Hanson. Now, there is a massive rise up in the polls at the moment for One Nation Party. This is only going to strengthen that. And I actually foresee that One Nation is going to overtake the LNP within everything that's happening recently, because Australians now, the only voice that seems to be saying what people want to hear is Hastie said it clear as day. I watched him on a reel last night. You said it clear then, and Pauline Hanson has said it. But this is going to push people further right. Do you ever see that the Nationals would ever? I know this is very hard, but
no, go ahead.
Okay. Would the relationship with the Nationals and the Liberals be put at stake if the Liberals, someone like Susan Ley, doesn't say what she needs to be saying, and then you guys could push to One Nation?
Yeah. Look. There's two parts to that question. One, I've always said that the Nationals Party, and I'm a member of the Nationals Party in Canberra, the relationship we have the Liberal Party is a business relationship for us. It's like what works for us. It's not a marriage. We're not haven't promised lifelong love to them. We'll always review it, and we nearly did. Well, we did split for a few days after the election this year because we had some disagreements that weren't being resolved. They have been resolved. The Liberal Party has now comprehensively dropped net zero, and it was comprehensive. The Nationals Party dropped it unanimously, and then when we had the debate, or they had the debate in the Liberal Party room, it was about 60%. That's about 2/3. That's a smashing result, particularly given where we were from. So we're united on that now. So I want to work with those people, and I want to win. We've got to win. It's great to go on these podcasts, and we need to spread the message. You're doing excellent work, but the ultimate goal is to win and take our country back and make things better. And right now, to say defeat this net zero scam, I have, across Liberal and National parties, 69 members of Parliament across the House and the Senate to do that. Pauline Hanson has 4 plus Barnaby in the House. So look, yes, she's get a little bit of momentum since the election, but let's just take a reality check and a bit of chill pill here about where we are as a country and how we're going to get 76 members of the House of Reps to believe in what we're saying and 39 in the Senate. That's what I need. I need those two things. And so I'm happy to work with One Nation in the Parliament to do those things. But the Liberal Party have a lot of members and they have a lot of hope, I think, a lot of promise going forward with people like Andrew Hastie. But it's not just Andrew Hastie. There's Garth Hamilton from Toowoomba. I just had a Net Zero forum with him last week. There's Henry Pike. There's Tony Passon here in your state. Alex Antich, of course, who hosted me last night. I'm going to Tony Passon's electorate later today. So there's a lot of good people coming through the Liberal Party who I think give me hope that this relationship between us and them has a bright future. We've been the most successful political pairing in this country's history by far. And yes, we're at a low point post the election, but I'm very confident we'll bounce back. Now, in terms of One Nation, look, as I say, I'm happy to work with them. And I do have a lot of respect for Pauline, for her longevity, her resilience. But you've got to be fair because I want to win. She hasn't shown a great degree of organisational capability. That's a serious point that needs to be put to One Nation, right? If you think you're ready for prime time, you think you can run this nation, how is it that you've lost something? I don't know. Mark Latham puts it at 33. I haven't had them up, but easily 20 or 30 people have left their party through various disagreements in just the last decade or so. Right.
There's been a lot of people in the Liberal Party get kicked out as well.
Not that many. Yeah. Not that many, right? That's pretty remarkable for a small party, right? And I had this, get this, it's a funny story. I turn up at Richo's funeral last week. First person I see on the street, Barnaby Joyce, the day before he'd left.
Yeah.
He'd left my party. And I said to his friend, mate, I can't effing get away from you, right? So we went and had breakfast. Went and had breakfast. Obviously, I'm pretty disappointed in him, but we'll still be mates. I can separate what happens on the football paddock and what happens else. It was at Richo's funeral. Like, I have plenty of disagreements with Labor Party people, but some of them I get along with very, very well. There's some good people in the Labor Party. So I go and have breakfast with him, and we got talking about stuff, and I said to him, mate, I've never seen you pull your punches more than when you got asked about the burqa ban, the burqa thing, that stunt. I'm sure you remember it. Mate, I don't like that. I don't like that politics. I don't like mocking people. I don't think it's effective. I think it distracted from the main issues, particularly that day. We had the government on toast on net zero, and anyway, rah. And I know Barnaby doesn't really like it. He doesn't. Anyway, when he gets asked about it in the media, he's like, oh, well, Pauline's got a right to have her view. Everyone can make their views heard. Very un-Barnaby-like. He'd usually just tell you. I said, mate, if David Littleproud wore a burqa into the house, you'd be up his ribs straight away. And you'd be protected in doing so, because in our party, in the Nationals Party and the Liberal Party, the boss is not David Littleproud. The boss is actually not Susan Lee. I know you see that. She's not the boss of the party. The boss ultimately is the grassroots members who pre-select you. They're your boss. If you get them offside, then you're in trouble because you won't get your pre-selection.
The problem is with the boss.
So Barnaby would.
Everyone's leaving the Liberal Party.
Well, not quite. Alex is doing a great job here, and
I'm hearing people are leaving in droves.
Well, they've done good stuff. But this is my point. That now maybe they'll change, but right now, Pauline runs a party where she is the boss. And if Barnaby gets on her bad side, he can be kicked out tomorrow. It doesn't happen in our parties because when you're a member of our party, you have actual power. You have a say. Despite the frustrations with the leadership and sometimes with the executive of the party, I get all that. It is a frustrating process, but you get a say. Now, Pauline's saying she's going to set up branches. We'll see if that happens. But as I come back to my point, I think it's got to be put to her, have you got what it takes to actually build an army? Because no matter how popular you are, no matter how much, and I've got a lot of respect for her longevity and resilience, no matter how much she's done, Pauline has precisely one vote in the parliament, and she'll always only have one vote. No matter how high her personal vote goes, it's not a presidential system like the US, she has one vote. So she needs to get at least another 120 odd people. Can she do that? I've got my questions. Yeah,
look, and I do as well, but I think you're underestimating Australians and anger at the moment.
I totally agree with that, but I would say I think Susan's made a good decision on this net zero stuff. I personally think she deserves a second chance to make a first impression.
I definitely don't.
You don't? That's fair enough. You've got your own views. You're welcome to have them. It's democracy. I don't think she started well. right? There was some missteps there, and that's clearly reflected in the polls and what have you. But people can learn, people can change. She is changing, so I'm happy to give her a go. But as I say, if that doesn't work out, it's a Liberal Party. That's their leadership. But if it doesn't work out, eventually there are great people coming through in the Liberal Party. You've mentioned some of them. Let's just keep an open mind, because the end result here is let's stay focused on what will be best for Australia. That's what I've got my own judgments. I've said to you, I think what's best for Australia is we rebuild the Liberal National Party into the fighting Conservative force it should be and has been in the recent past, and make a success of that. Yes, I can understand why people are frustrated with us and going elsewhere, but I think some of those options are going to end in tears.
Well, it's going to be really interesting. I don't think we're going to have a political landscape like we've ever had before in this country. Maybe, I don't know, maybe back in the early 2000s. I can't even really remember.
No, this is a different time. I think in our lifetimes we've ever seen it. Probably, I think there's a lot of parallels between this time and sort of around the late 1920s, 1930s, the Depression.
Exactly right.
The rise of extreme movements.
Yeah.
People have forgotten, we don't get taught this history, but there was a new right sort of quasi-fascist type movement in the 1930s. Jack Lang was, attempted assassination of Jack Lang at the opening of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. There was a lot of volatility then, and we've got a lot of volatility now. It's different. We've got different challenges, but we really do. It's really important, I think, to get involved. And I suppose I'll finish with, look, I would just encourage everyone to get involved. I've got my views about, I think you should get involved in the main parties. I think that's the easiest way back. But if you don't agree with me, that's fine. Yep, you should do something. And if you want to go and support One Nation or someone else, even, as I say, there are good people in the Labor Party. Don't think Anthony Albanese is one of them. Sorry. But there are good people in the Labor Party. So maybe some of your listeners are on that side of politics. Get in there and bring back some common sense there. Because our country needs it. Our country needs you to be involved.
Well, Matt, I encourage you to keep speaking the truth and keep speaking your mind out on certain things, because there's not too many politicians at the moment that are doing that, especially with the recent events. So I'm glad to hear that you're not just attacking what the person was handling, but we're looking behind the scene as well about what we need to do to look at the root cause of what happened. So thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
No, Sam, really keep doing what you're doing. It's very important.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for tuning in to Two Worlds Collide podcast. If you want to support what I'm doing, you can grab some merch or jump on my Patreon program. Both links are in the description. Until next week, take care, guys.